Now, the last but not least presentation today comes from Ministry of Energy. Dr. Yehia Khoja. He is currently the advisor and leading the AI and Business Development General Department at the Ministry of Energy. Dr. Yehia he holds an MBA and master's degree in the electrical engineering from Stanford University. His professional experience prior to this joining Ministry of Energy includes working at Saudi Aramco, Amazon, and NVIDIA. He is a member of several organizations such as World Energy Council, Future Energy Leaders, MIT Technical Review List of Arab AI Experts, and MISC Leaders to 2030. So he's going to talk about some ministry point of view on the AI and energy strategy. So please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It was a bit challenging to be the last talk of the day, so I tried to look at this situation as being the glass half full. So I realized there are two outcomes at the end of my talk. Either you'd be asleep, which is one outcome. Either you'd be excited and energized. But then I realized that either situation or either outcome, at the end you would have more energy, so that's actually a net positive. So whether you take a nap during my talk or you actually are able to listen and you're excited by this at the end, hopefully you have more energy at the end. But I will try as best as possible to stick to outcome number 2 and tell you more about why, first of all, we at the Ministry of Energy have an AI department, an AI team at the ministry. What is our role and kind of what's the opportunity or ambition that we see here? Before we do that, if you allow me to quickly introduce myself, because I started my career at Saudi Aramco about 12, 13 years ago. Starting as a data networks engineer, I worked in various fields such as Sheba, Upcake, and of course Dhahran. After which I've joined the Ministry of Energy, so I've been with the ministry for about 10 years, working on various programs such as Saudi Energy Efficiency Program, local content development, circular carbon economy, risk and business continuity, innovation, and now my personal favorite, AI and business development. In the middle, I did a few things as well. I went for grad school, as Professor Shu mentioned, at Stanford. I did my work on AI there. During my work at Stanford, I also did a summer at Amazon where we used deep learning to enhance the delivery experience and last mile technology for our customers. And then after graduation, I worked on building autonomous vehicles with NVIDIA. Actually, if you promise not to tell anyone, I still did not return my laptop to NVIDIA, and I still have it until today. So at one point, I will return the corporate laptop to NVIDIA. So let's get started. Let me jump right into it and go straight into what's our vision and our mission as the AI department or as Saudi Arabia when it comes to AI and energy. So the hypothesis that I personally have is very simple. Saudi Arabia, factually and objectively speaking, is a leading country and a leading nation in the energy landscape globally. That is just a fact. Whether it is oil and gas, whether it is petrochemicals, whether it is conventional power, renewables as well, and now even carbon and hydrogen, Saudi Arabia is always at the frontier when it comes to energy. So that then poses a golden opportunity. Why can't Saudi Arabia also become a leading nation in applying AI in the energy sector? Because based on my humble experience, I have not yet seen AI widespread, at scale, efficiently, effectively being implemented in energy. And that could be for many reasons. The energy sector is a relatively mature sector, it's relatively conservative. Maybe it has the mindset of, if it's not broken, don't fix it, don't touch it, don't even look at it. But then this is exactly why we need innovators such as yourself to push the boundary and invent new ways of doing our usual business. So when we thought of, okay, this vision is very nice sounding, but how do we turn it into a reality? We found 4 key opportunities for us to focus on. First of all, supply reliability. How can we continue to supply the world with energy in a reliable way with more throughput and more energy? Second, of course, is energy transition. How do we ensure that we continue to do this sustainably while not harming the environment? Third of all is how can we continue to supply energy while creating economic and financial value for our societies? And last but not least is also the safety and security of energy. So if you listen to one of the many fantastic talks that our dear Minister of Energy gives, he sometimes talks about the trilemma of energy, where you need to balance between supply, reliable supply, you need to balance between sustainability, you need to balance between economic development, and of course, safety and security. That's actually more than 3, but if you entertain, it's the end of the day, so we like to think in multi-dimensions when it comes to AI. So if you think about it, it's always a trade-off. And how do we balance between this trade-off while continuing to progress and also bring about positive change? So what I hope to do in this talk is to gradually start to translate by revealing opportunities for us to together think about AI and energy, and then also tell you about the projects that we are already doing at the Ministry of Energy.
You're encouraged to stay on this side.
Oh, really? Okay.
The camera is capturing you. So.
Oh, okay. As long as it doesn't shoot, I'm fine. Okay. Right. So I should be around here?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'll just go in circles because I'm quite energetic. But let me first share about the process of how do we find the right opportunities or projects for us to get invested in AI. Because I always like to describe this as, let's think of ourselves as a group, as an investment company. We probably have a couple of $100 million in our portfolio, but how do we choose each project to invest in order to get the right impact? So as you see in front of us, we follow the process of first starting with a very long list of potential ideas or opportunities. And then from there, it starts as a simple funnel of prioritizing through criteria and evaluating each opportunity to find the right ones. The two most important dimensions and sensible dimensions that we at least wanted to start with is impact and feasibility. And feasibility wasn't in the intention of, is this project easy or difficult to do? It's more, can this project actually be done? And as you have all noticed from the talks today, a big limiting factor is always the availability of data. So is this project feasible? Is there data that we can access? Is there data that we can reach? And then would this project be impactful enough for us to pursue in order to develop? So you can see how we started with a long list of over 200 potential opportunities and ideas. And from there, we started to cascade down all the way until we reached 90. And then from 90, we created a simple 2x2 matrix to identify the 48 top priority projects. And then now we started, obviously, to focus on the first ones that we should implement. And now the first wave is about 18 projects that we're trying to execute this year. And in a few slides, I will tell you more about these 18 projects and how widespread they are in the energy sector. So let's also look at the energy value chain. So if we look at the journey of every drop or molecule of energy, all the way from exploration until production, until it reaches every single home to the left of the screen, you can see that it's a very complex system. Probably you're already very aware of this. But then how do we insert ourselves in every single point in this value chain and see how we can leverage technology in general, but AI in specific, to add value and create value? There's a saying that our team probably is very bored of me hearing it, and they're probably tired of me saying it. But I truly believe in this, that it's very important in these types of journeys that you think big, but start small. And inshallah, in this talk, you will see how we're following this approach. So as you can see, very complex system, a lot of potential opportunities. We started very humbly, simply picking 3 areas to start with, 3 projects that we thought were meaningful, were good for us to start learning, to start building momentum, and from there we had faith. Another saying I like to share within our team is the famous saying or quote by MLK, Martin Luther King, is faith is taking the first step even though you don't see the rest of the staircase. So this is our very first step, and hopefully I reveal the rest of the staircase within our presentation. So let me tell you more about these projects. Essentially, first of all, petroleum product monitoring. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Personal protective equipment, compliance and monitoring, and third but not least, smart meter efficiency in the homes, and also predictions in the homes. And I will talk about each of these projects in sequence, so let me start with petroleum product monitoring. But first, since we're in a university, let's do a quick pop quiz at the end of the day, just to make, in case you weren't already anxious to leave here, hopefully this pop quiz will push you through the edge. So let's start with a simple question. Just throw numbers out there, no need to raise your hand. How many barrels of petroleum products do you think get distributed every single day in Saudi Arabia? 9 billion? 5 million, okay. Million, okay, 5 million. Billion, okay, 5 billion, okay. Oh, okay, no, that's perfectly fine. 4 million, okay, that's closer. 3 million, even closer. 2 million, yes. Okay, good guess. The questions get harder a bit, but Okay, now 2 million barrels every single day in Saudi Arabia being distributed. So, great. How many trucks does it take to distribute these 2 million barrels every single day? It's not 2 million. So, 10,000? Great guess. 40,000? 200,000? 10,000 was the closest. How much? 7,000? Okay. Okay. Money has a process. Okay, go ahead. So it's closer to 10,000. It's about 15,000 trucks. In total, you have about 60,000 trucks, but every single day actively working and shipping these shipments every day is about 15,000 trucks. So, okay, now we have two facts. 2 million barrels every single day, 15,000 trucks moving these barrels every single day. Now, the toughest question. How do you ensure the quality and the quantity of all of these 2 million barrels over 15,000 trucks? Sensing, AI, which is, well, it was a trick question because that was kind of setting me up to show you the next slides, but you can already see how complex the problem gets. And that's essentially the point I was trying to make. And then what I like to remind myself and our team, it's not only about measuring barrels. If you think about it, there are actually illegal activities happening. There's black market activity. Some people maliciously are incentivized to steal some of this subsidized material and go sell it in the black market. And that, in turn, for our country, results in billions of riyals of losses every single year from our national budget. Now, what I like to remind myself and my team of is that it's not only about barrels, it's not only about trucks. Billions of riyals every single year for a country means schools that were not built. It means healthcare facilities and supplies that were not provided. It means roads and cities and rural areas that were not connected. It means so much for our country. So it's not just about barrels, it's not just about trucks, which obviously is the mechanics of our situation or system, but it's more about the bigger national level that we try to solve. And this, again, is our point of view when we think of AI projects in the energy sector in the ministry. So as you see, and as Professor Farouk kindly mentioned, we use a mixture of sensing. As Mani also mentioned, we use a mixture of AI to try and predict and monitor the quantity and quality for these projects. What you see in front of you is actual footage from sites where we have installed cameras. On the trucks, on the left side, you see us installing level sensors, also flow meters to monitor the flow within the system. What I'm very happy to report that now finally we have a dashboard that actually shows us where are the trucks' locations, names of the driver, license plate, name of the hauling company, quantity, and certain measurements as well. Now we're also able to do simple AI applications of, let's say, detecting whether a vehicle is authorized or unauthorized, detecting whether a person is authorized or unauthorized to be in a certain area, and that way we can start to monitor the quantity and quality of our products. Again, coming back to the idea that I mentioned of thinking big but starting small. In this project, and most of our projects start as a proof of concept, or if you want to be philosophical, proof of value for this technology to be in the energy sector. Right now, we're only focusing on 40 trucks, so 40 trucks, only on the west coast of Saudi Arabia. So we're not even close to covering 2 million barrels or 15,000 trucks. But we need innovators and researchers and other thinkers such as yourself to think about, okay, how can we scale sensors? Because they're quite costly to produce and install. How can we monitor scalable systems? How can we build AI systems that are robust and able to monitor all of these perturbations that could happen in our system or noise that could happen in our system? So that was the very first project, and it's one canonical, or I would say keystone project that we have, that we're very excited about, and it's very close to being revealed. Another project that we're working on is obviously the compliance and monitoring of personal protective equipment. Anyone that works in the energy sector knows that safety first is always the mantra. Like any issue could result in catastrophes and losses in operation, and God forbid, even fatalities, which is the worst loss that we could suffer. So we created and worked with a private company called Taqa in the eastern province. And what we started with is just one yard that they have. And again, anyone that works in AI knows that this is a simple object detection or object monitoring computer vision model that you can even get off the shelf. And here I think we were using MobileNet. But essentially the idea is that now we show the energy sector in Saudi Arabia that, hey, you can use AI for different problems that you can solve in the energy sector. And for us, even choosing the simple AI example, the strategic choice here was, first of all, it starts building trust. It starts building project management experience in terms of how do we do data sharing, how do we work with private sector, how do we bring different stakeholders together, while the AI component is relatively figured out and easy. So that was kind of the positive and the reason why we followed this project. Even though at the time when we made the choice to work on this project, there were many off-the-shelf solutions that we could have used, but still the experience and the trust that was built through it was a good step in the right direction. And now coming to the last, okay, I forgot that this was a video. So you can actually see the monitoring. You can still see that the accuracy is a bit lagging. So there are a few that are not being detected. There are a few that are mislabeled. But again, think big, start small, and then iterate on the process. And then from here, you can build a machine learning pipeline. So then you have a continuous flow of data and continuous training of your models. The other aspect or opportunity that this opens up is how do we collaborate with the private sector to scale up our projects. I always say to our team that let's not forget we're a ministry, we're a government agency. We're not a software company like a Google or a Meta or Amazon where we try to produce software or code every day. We're not an investment company or we're not a startup either. So we're not in the business of competing with the private sector. Our role as government, I always mention it in two ways. First of all, is a change agent or a change catalyst. As I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, the energy sector is relatively conservative, relatively mature, so there's a lot of inertia to change the ways of how things have typically been done for decades. The second thing is that we are an orchestrator. There are many players in this ecosystem that don't normally talk to each other, and then it's our role as the leader of this sector to connect the dots and bring people that don't normally talk to each other together. And I have faith that magic will happen once you do those connections. So here, the point that we're trying to make across is after we do a proof of concept, we then try to look for partners in the private sector or outside the ministry walls to try and see who would be interested to work with us to scale this project further, to move from only monitoring 40 trucks today to reaching 15,000 trucks tomorrow. Now, allow me to talk about the last project, and then I will summarize and conclude my talk. The last project, if you've been living in Saudi Arabia in the last 3 years, you probably heard or maybe even experienced a major project that we did where we installed 10 million smart meters across the country. A few facts or glimpses or highlights about that project that we're particularly proud of. That project started in the height of COVID when curfews were happening, but we still managed to shatter records. So one record, for example, was that we were able to install 124,000 smart meters in one day or per day. And that record or rate was sustained for, I think, 1 or 2 weeks during curfew, during shortage of having skilled labor or skilled people that could install these smart meters. The second thing is that actually in the middle of the project, they switched technologies. So they started with PLC, and then narrowband IoT was just up and coming. I think IEEE released the standard, and then that created an opportunity for us to adopt narrowband IoT and install it in these sensors. And now I think 60% of the sensors are based on narrowband IoT. Last but not least was that it also created an opportunity for us to localize the production of smart meters. So even though at the beginning of the project, many of them were imported from outside of Saudi Arabia, quickly in the middle of it and through agile methodology, they worked with local manufacturers such as Advanced Electronics Company or Al-Fanar. And many of these smart meters were actually produced in Saudi Arabia. And as of today, even after the project ended, some smart meters are now being exported to neighboring countries that are interested to procure smart meters as well. So this is a very interesting success story that we're using as well as inspiration for us, because we can see a similar trajectory or experience that we can replicate in the petroleum product project, which I shared at the beginning. But back to this project. Okay, great. We installed 10 million smart meters. They're now in almost every single home in Saudi Arabia, but now what? I mean, what did people actually gain from these smart meters? And this is where we saw the opportunity. So what you see in front of you is a mock electricity bill that we created. We created 2 AI models. The first one tries to predict the future bills of next month based on your behavior and consumption pattern today. The second model actually tries to identify the appliances behind the meter and try to tell you as a homeowner of where is your consumption coming from per appliance. So instead of you receiving a bill of saying, let's say, 100 riyal or 200 riyal every single month, you now see that, okay, your consumption is broken down by 50% coming from air conditioning, and then 10% coming from lighting, 20% coming from washing machines, what have you. And now we believe that that would have a nudging effect for the conscientious consumer to try to think, how can I be more conscientious and more energy efficient in my consumption? And there are many more ideas that are quite exciting that you could build on top of this and build an intelligence layer for the consumer to start behaving more efficiently. So now let me come back to this picture. And if you saw at the beginning, like I said, we started very humbly with only the blue circles at the beginning. Now you see that we are adding more color into it, no pun intended, but you can see that we are widening our coverage. And we're starting with thinking of feasibility studies in many of these projects in terms of feasibility study to study different opportunities in each of these areas, study their impact, study their feasibility, and helping us in assessing what should be the next set of projects that we should work on executing. So luckily, we started this journey about a year and a half ago, and I think we are on a good trajectory. We always remind ourselves that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So results do not come magically. AI isn't a magic wand where you just wave it and things just happen overnight. It is definitely a process that requires consistency and perseverance, because not all data is clean, not all data is available, and we can all share our sorrows after this about AI projects that didn't go as intended or as we wished at the beginning of them. But let me tell you more about the 18 projects and then summarize and conclude my talk. So the 18 projects in our wave 1 in this year are distributed, as you see, between oil and gas, petrochemicals, power, renewables, carbon and hydrogen, and even cross-cutting themes such as health and safety. And in many of these projects, we work with different partners, whether it is technology partners such as Siemens or IBM, or we work with different private sector companies like, for example, Taqa, or even the principal buyer in the electricity sector and what have you. So in summary, I would describe that we're always looking for collaborators, and I personally like to think there are 4 major themes for collaboration, and of course there are more, but let's just think of this as more of a clustering that is subject to change. So first of all, obviously solution development. We can think together of new algorithms, new ways of dealing with data challenges, imbalances. How do we develop new models? How do we make our models more efficient, lower latency, higher accuracy, and what have you? Obviously, advisory and consulting, because we are noticing that there is a big gap that needs to happen before AI can actually enter the picture. A big gap in terms of digitizing data, building the right infrastructure, having proper processes in place, creating a change management process, and otherwise. Infrastructure and sensors, we also covered that in our first project. Whether it is infrastructure in terms of storage and compute and creating the right data warehouses or data lakes to create accessibility for the data, or sensors in order to collect the data and then making sure the connectivity is there for data to be centralized. And last but not least, digital talents, because I like to describe it as professionals or people that have been working in the energy sector for decades or for years, probably developed something that you could call energy intuition. They might work in a plant or a facility and they hear a certain turbine or see a certain generator and they immediately catch that there's something wrong or off. I would like for those energy professionals to now develop AI intuition. So where they see a stream of data or data opportunities, and then they connect with their AI friends or AI engineer friends or consultants and tell them, hey, I think there's an idea there that we can develop, or I think there's a question that we can answer through data. And that is what I mean by AI intuition. With that, thank you very much for your kind attention. Luckily, I don't see anyone asleep yet, but so I'll quit while I'm ahead. I just want to give a big shout out to our wonderful team. Some of them are here with us today. Al-Jawhara, Abdurrahman, and Amjad are there. There are many more working behind the scenes as well. We always look forward to find more collaborators and more people to work with us. With that, thank you very much for your kind attention. You can email us at ai@ministryofenergy.gov.sa. It goes to our team's email. There's also my personal email up there, but I believe AI is much easier to remember. But both are up there for you to kind of feel free to reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Looks like the organizer did a great job of selecting the last speaker of the day.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some time for questions. Way in the back.
Hello. Thank you very much for the presentation. So I have a question that is, as you collect more and more data, do you have any plans to take decisions based on the knowledge that you get from the data? Because one thing is to collect the data, and the other thing is transform the data into knowledge that will help you to take decisions to improve some performance index. And I will say that the performance index in your case is some kind of policy. So any plans to derive new policies based on the data that you collect?
Okay, so thank you very much for that question. So let me tell you a bit more about how we're looking at data at the ministry, which is, I mean, as a disclaimer, is run by another team, but I know of the great work that they're doing, but I don't have all the details. And then let me get back to your specific question. So in general, when it comes to data or data in the energy sector, right now within the ministry, we're building something called the Energy Information Center. The ambition is to replicate the data model that the EIA or the Energy Administration in the US has been following. And our ambition is to create data that is accessible, reachable by researchers, by people, and at various access levels. So some people want to access data in power, some people want data in oil exports, some people want data in terms of carbon emissions, and then all of it would be centralized in one place and then accessible through the EIC or the Energy Information Center. That center is currently being built. I think it's in, last I heard, it's in alpha testing phase, and then gradually it would be released and opened up as well. You might also be aware that at the national level or the kingdom level, there's also a body or governmental organization called the National Data Management Office. They are more the regulatory body for data in Saudi Arabia. They have published policies for data sharing, data classification, also open data sets, and so on and so forth. And they have also mandated each government entity that owns a sector. So in our case, the Ministry of Energy owns or is the custodian of the energy sector in Saudi Arabia, to start to first apply the general guidelines or policies for data in the kingdom, and then customize them per sector. Because our needs in energy might be different from the healthcare sector, might be different from the education sector. So that's just a general glimpse or overview about data. Coming back to your specific question of do we intend of using data to inform and make our policy making more intelligent? Absolutely yes. And I would even dare to say that it's not something that we will do. I will say that that's something that we have been doing for a while. Because it's actually based in the way His Royal Highness likes to operate, the way and the culture that he has built in the ministry. So there are actually a couple of guiding principles we have, and the closest similarity is I would describe them as our corporate values in the ministry, but one of them is actually being fact-based. So it's not a matter of opinions. Opinions don't matter when you have facts and you have data. There's actually a famous saying that I like, I forgot who said it, but it said, if you don't have data, we'll just go ahead and do it my way. So otherwise, if you have objective data, we can discuss data. The other thing is that we follow a bottoms-up approach. So our policy making actually is not top-down. And we have started this even in the journey 10 years ago with the energy efficiency program. So if you focus at the effort of the energy efficiency program, we decided to focus on 3 sectors: industry, buildings, and transportation. And the reason was because using data, we found out that these 3 sectors consume over 90% of the energy consumption in Saudi Arabia. So it didn't make any sense to go into, let's say, the marginal sectors that consume less. So we started focusing on those 3 sectors. I personally worked on industry at the time, and within industry, we replicated the process and started to look, where's consumption in industry going? And we found that it's going into 3 main industries: steel, cement, and petrochemicals. And that way, we decided to focus on energy efficiency or setting energy efficiency guidelines for these 3 main industries. And from there, the journey starts there. So I would say that's something that we have been doing always. I know that with HRH, Minister of Energy, each time we meet, he starts to look for the data, starts to look for the logic, he starts to look for our calculation. I think even in one public setting, he even talked about one of our big programs or initiatives is now liquid displacement, where we try to look at old, outdated power generation technology that leverages liquids and try to substitute it with gas or even other generation capacities. And he said the economics just make sense. That's why we moved ahead with this project. It makes sense for us to decommission old plants where they're very old, and in some sense try to retrofit, but invest in that project because the returns would make that project quite profitable and would make economic sense. So data actually is very well ingrained in our culture and the way we operate. Luckily, they didn't need to wait for an AI department to come and tell them how important data is to make decisions.
Yeah, I have the microphone. Thank you very much for the energetic presentation. I've seen over the years the biggest challenge is air conditioning in summer. So I'm not really sure, like, how do you change the behavior of people? Because, you know, you can talk about it during the summer and people just forget about, about this after. And we are consuming around 2 million barrels,
Yeah.
I mean, domestically, and we could actually export most of that, internationally.
Yeah.
But as a Ministry of Energy, and it's located in Riyadh, Riyadh is really populated right now. How do you, as a ministry, engage with people to reduce air conditioning consumption? And as you know, like, not every home is a smart home.
Right.
Some people, they have, manual air conditioning.
Yeah.
How do you change this behavior? Because you showed a slide with smart meters. So this was installed, but how do you change people behavior?
Okay, so great question. So the question again is, how do we, especially when it comes to air conditioning in a very warm or hot country like Saudi Arabia, how do we want to change people's behavior when it comes to their relationship with air conditioners? So again, I can tell you about what we have done already, and then we can think together about what are the opportunities or ideas as we move forward together. So what we have done, and this brings me back to our experience with the energy efficiency program, we noticed a couple of things. First of all, the air conditioners themselves were not standardized. There was no efficiency label, there was no efficiency rating. Air conditioners were just produced and thrown into stores without any standardization. So creating a standard for air conditioners and an energy efficiency label, again, helps energy conscientious consumers in finding the right level of efficiency for their air conditioners. That's one thing. The other thing, we realized that buildings are not properly insulated, especially commercial buildings or buildings that are built by real estate developers that are not going to live in the building, but are more going to rent it. They did not have the incentive to invest more in building the right insulation or installing the right insulation in order to make it more acceptable to lower air conditioning. So we started to create that as a policy, and now you do not get any electricity connected to your building if it's not properly insulated, and an inspector from the Saudi electricity company needs to go and check and validate that you properly insulated your building. Third, we also created an incentive program where every single citizen or resident in Saudi Arabia can procure and gets subsidy to procure up to 6 highly efficient air conditioners. So we actually want to make it accessible because we understand highly efficient air conditioners are more expensive than less efficient ones. But we also, again, the economics made sense that we secure a budget from the government to subsidize up to 6 air conditioners per person. And now you can actually go to stores and ask them for the highly efficient air conditioners. They take your ID number and they actually give you the subsidy or give you a discount. I think, don't quote me on the number because I always am careful about managing expectations, but I think it's a reasonable number that at least makes the price of a highly efficient AC comparable to a lower efficient one. So those are all things that we have done. Now let's think about the future. Actually, one fourth thing that we are already doing is also the awareness campaigns. So people typically set their ACs, I think, to 16 Celsius. But then what we're trying to educate people on is that you can set it to 23. You will still be alive, everything will be fine, and that's less energy consuming, and would actually reduce the amount of energy consumption. Into the future, I like to think of ideas of, okay, can we tell people about what is the right time? Can we try to automatically change the air conditioning? Can we detect if air conditioners are on when no one is at home? Can we find solutions to make homes smarter, even if they don't have additional equipment installed to make them smart? So we've all seen maybe the Nest thermostat, which already is doing much of what I said, but can we do that through a software-based solution? And we start to either control certain systems or appliances at the home to make it more efficient, or at least alert the homeowner. Those are all opportunities, like I said, but I think conversations like this help us think of new ideas or new ways in which we can move forward. Yeah.
Thank you, Yehia, very much. My question is about the mechanism that you were working with the private sector, and maybe I'm quoting the 3 projects that you're working on.
Okay.
So the first one, we want to maybe optimize the, monitor the, fuel wastage and these kind of things. So it makes sense for the, Aramco or a private company to invest the money to implement these sensors because
Right.
it saves money on that context. And again, with the health and safety, there is monetized
Right.
risk associated with incidents. But when it comes to these smart sensors, there is a big landscape. We've installed 10 millions or so, a lot of sensors going on. But it's better for the Saudi Electric company not to make people energy efficient. It's better to have them having a big electricity bill. So how do you work with these conflict of interest? To me, this is how I see it.
Yeah.
Because
Actually,
less energy efficiency is better for that company.
I would actually challenge that very last notion. Because, let's follow that line of thought. Let's assume everyone is less efficient and they're more incentivized to be less efficient. That would actually increase the amount of electricity demand, which would increase the load and generation capacity demanded by the Saudi Electricity Company. And especially with the introduction of renewables, if you're not careful, you might misbalance your load, and that would then lead to outages. So it's actually not risk-free. But I think when it comes to the individual, I would agree that the individual doesn't really think in that macro sense or that societal sense or national sense. Taking it a step backward, with a higher level view, what we have learned from our journey that there are definitely sets of projects or problems that are best suited for the private sector. It is not in my interest or anyone's interest for that matter that I go into Aramco facility or Saudi Electricity Company or SABIC facility and start to implement for them a predictive maintenance project. That's completely their business. They know their facilities better than anyone. They are self-incentivized to create a predictive maintenance model that predicts failures before they happen. Because that's very operationally specific, I would say. What we found our sweet spot is to focus on national level projects or mandates, such as the Petroleum Product Monitoring Project. Those are types of projects that extend or kind of go beyond the boundaries of one particular company. They are more at a national scale, at a national level, and they impact everyone. And they require everyone's support and collaboration in order to tackle that challenge. A similar project that we're currently working on is also monitoring emissions using satellite imagery and AI, or in particular carbon emissions using satellite imagery and AI, on Saudi Arabia as a whole. And that again extends beyond the boundaries of any particular company or even organization. So these types of projects are the ones that we are more interested in. And we see those are the ones that it makes sense for us as a ministry to insert ourselves into the picture.
Okay, one more question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I'm very impressed by your lecture. I'm chemist. This is first time for me to attend AI and machine learning. But is it possible to link between this technology and remote sensor and GIS in your strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So first of all, thank you for your kind words, and it's always a pleasure to have a first-time AI audience member, and I hope this isn't your last. So otherwise, you can blame it on me if this is your last AI lecture. But if I understood your question correctly, can we, let's say, couple between AI technology and, let's say, remote sensing technologies such as GIS, correct? Was that your question? Okay, so actually so it's not GIS in particular, but we're definitely using remote sensing in the Petroleum Product Monitoring Project. So there we are using cameras, we're using flow meters, we're using level sensors, we're even using smart locks, and we're using GPS sensors in the trucks. So we're very intentional that at the beginning we tried various types of sensors because we don't know which ones we will need when we want to scale to 15,000 trucks. But it was a conscious choice to try as many sensors as we could in a sensible range in order for us to see which ones work. Now, in the end, there's a saying I like that data might be the new oil. Sensors or IoT sensors are the new oil rig, because they're essentially what they're doing, extracting data, giving you a lot of information at a certain frequency. Many of them are very high frequency in the order of seconds or even milliseconds. And that way you end up having a rich data source, which you then, on top of, can build an intelligence layer or an AI layer. Now, obviously, in between collecting the raw data and producing the AI model, there's a lot of steps, whether it is data ingestion, data indexing, in order to make it accessible for people around you, data labeling and quality checking as well. And then after data quality or data labeling, you are then at that stage able to start producing AI models. Last thing I will say is, personally, I like to think in terms of questions. So when we come into an AI project, what is the key question we're trying to answer? Using the data. So if you notice from the petroleum product monitoring project, it came down to one question. How do we monitor or maintain quality and quantity of petroleum products? That was the key question. And when it came to smart meter, the key question was, can we predict the bill of next month using today's data? That was one question. Or another question was, can we identify the appliances behind the meter without installing new hardware? The reason why I like to think of questions, because that then adds intentionality when you look into the data, and intentionality when you start producing models. And it's not just going through data for the sake of going through data. So there's actually purpose behind it and an end goal that you're trying to reach. So I hope that was helpful. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's about time to wrap up. Let's thank our speaker again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So